16. Autopsy revelations from black actor deaths. What if a Hollywood king filmed his most physically demanding role while cancer was quietly destroying his body and told almost no one? What if one of television's most disciplined fitness icons collapsed just 6 days before his blockbuster premiered, his heart hiding a danger no one could see? Behind every famous face is a battle the cameras never captured, a secret diagnosis, a silent disease, a truth the world only learned too late. These are 16 unforgettable black screen legends, and the final chapters they never got to tell us themselves. Stay to the end, because the last story will stay with you long after this video ends. And subscribe to Secret Celebrity Stories, where we honor the lives behind the legends. Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier did not merely act in Hollywood, he quietly rewrote its every rule. When he passed away peacefully at his Beverly Hills home on January 6, 2022, at the remarkable age of 94, the world lost the very man who had broken nearly every barrier facing black performers throughout the entire 20th century. Back in 1964, he became the first black man ever to win the Academy Award for Best Actor, for Lilies of the Field, and he then spent the following 6 decades patiently dismantling the gatekeeping that had kept artists like him pushed out to the margins. His passing was never sudden, and it was never violent. It was instead the dignified, gentle close of a very long and very full life. His cause of death was cardiopulmonary failure, alongside 2 conditions his family had chosen to keep deeply private: Alzheimer's disease, which had been slowly progressing since around 2015, and prostate cancer, which he had managed for well over a decade. At 94, with those conditions quietly compounding one another, his body simply could no longer sustain itself. And what his story truly reveals is just how much private struggle can hide behind a graceful public face. The very man who radiated such strength in its stains, In the Heat of the Night and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, both released in that landmark year of 1967, spent his own final years facing an illness that slowly steals memory itself. And he did so far away from the cameras, entirely on his own terms. He would go on to direct hit films, to serve as an ambassador, to receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2009, and to mentor whole generations, including Oprah Winfrey, who lovingly called him her guiding light. Poitier's final chapter teaches us a gentle but genuinely powerful truth. Even the most towering life can quietly carry private pain, and true dignity is sometimes measured by exactly what a person chooses never to show the world. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston possessed what may well have been the single greatest voice of her entire generation, but she was also a genuine screen star, and her loss still aches deeply, all these years later. On February 11, 2012, just 1 day before the Grammy Awards, she was found unresponsive in her room at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. She was only 48 years old. The Los Angeles County coroner ultimately ruled her death an accidental drowning, with heart disease and the effects of cocaine listed as significant contributing factors. A quiet, cruel combination that overwhelmed a body already weakened by years of enormous strain. There is truly no need to dwell on the painful particulars of that day. What matters instead is the fuller, richer picture of who she was and what her passing can still teach us. Because far beyond her music, Whitney was one of the most beloved black female screen presences of the entire 1990s. Her film debut in The Bodyguard in 1992 grossed over $410 million worldwide, and its soundtrack went on to become one of the best-selling albums of all time. She followed it with Waiting to Exhale in 1995 and The Preacher's Wife in 1996, proving that her extraordinary warmth translated effortlessly onto the screen. Her story is also a sobering lesson in how addiction and heart disease can quietly travel together, hidden beneath all the fame and the glamour, and in how the immense pressures placed upon extraordinary talent can exact a truly devastating toll over time. Whitney's death did not merely end a legendary singing career. It closed a chapter on an entire golden era of both film and music. And tragically, her family's heartbreak was not yet finished. A shadow that would return, unimaginably, just 3 years later. If any part of her long struggle feels familiar to you, or to someone you love, Please know that reaching out for support is always a sign of strength, and never once of weakness. Chadwick Boseman. Few revelations in all of modern Hollywood have ever landed as heavily as the truth behind Chadwick Boseman's death. When the world first learned that he had passed on August 28, 2020, at just 43 years old, the grief alone was already staggering. But the far deeper shock was what almost no one had ever known. The very man who had so nobly embodied King T'Challa in Black Panther, a film that grossed over $1.3 billion globally and earned a historic Best Picture Oscar nomination, had been quietly fighting cancer that entire time. His cause of death was multiple organ failure due to colorectal cancer. He had been diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer all the way back in 2016, 4 full years before his passing, and had silently watched it progress to stage 4 while telling almost no one at all. And what makes his story feel almost unbearable is the timeline itself. Black Panther, both sweeping Avengers epics, Five Bloods, and his Oscar-nominated final performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, were every one of them filmed while he was actively undergoing surgeries, chemotherapy, and immunotherapy. The mighty warrior of Wakanda was, in truth, a man quietly receiving cancer treatment between his takes. Medical experts have since used his case to sound an urgent alarm. Colorectal cancer among adults under 50 has been rising sharply, and its early symptoms, like fatigue and abdominal pain, are far too often dismissed. Among Black Americans, the disease also carries notably higher mortality, a gap researchers tie directly to later screening and unequal access to care. Boseman chose privacy to the very end, reportedly fearing his diagnosis would change how directors saw him. His final chapter is never a story of tragedy alone. It is also an urgent call about early screening, and a portrait of a king who carried an entire battlefield inside his own body, without ever once asking anyone to lighten his crown. Michael K. Williams. Michael K. Williams gave the whole world Omar Little, the shotgun-carrying, code-living stick-up man of HBO's The Wire, famously named Barack Obama's favorite television character of all. So when he was found dead in his Brooklyn apartment on September 6, 2021, at 54 years old, the loss landed with unusual weight, precisely because Williams had never once hidden his own humanity from any of us. The New York City medical examiner ruled his death an accidental overdose, caused by the combined effects of fentanyl and several related substances. He had purchased what he genuinely believed was heroin, entirely unaware that it had been laced with fentanyl, an opioid so powerful that even a tiny amount can prove instantly fatal. Federal prosecutors went on to pursue the dealers responsible, the man who sold him that final, fatal dose. Irvin Cartagena was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison in 2023, one of 4 defendants ultimately convicted in connection with the drug operation. And what made his death so especially heartbreaking was that Williams had been remarkably, bravely open about his addiction for 2 full decades. He attended recovery meetings faithfully, spoke publicly and honestly about his relapses, and used his own platform to advocate for harm reduction and criminal justice reform, even mentoring at-risk young people in the very months before he died. He was, in the truest possible sense, a man in active recovery when a poison supply finally took his life. Beyond Omar, his towering legacy spanned Boardwalk Empire, an Emmy-nominated turn in Lovecraft Country, and the searing 12 Years a Slave. His final chapter stands today as a stark warning about the fentanyl crisis, now claiming lives right across the country, and a powerful reminder that addiction is a disease and never a moral failing. If you or someone you love is quietly struggling, please reach out to someone you trust. Real help exists, and no one should ever have to face this alone. Michael Clarke Duncan. Michael Clarke Duncan was the gentle giant of American cinema, a towering 6'5" presence with a voice like distant thunder and a warmth that quietly softened every single frame he ever entered. On July 13, 2012, he suffered a massive heart attack at his Los Angeles home. Though the doctors managed to revive him at first, the damage had already been done, and after nearly 2 long months in intensive care, he passed away on September 3, 2012, at just 54 years old. His death certificate told the sorrowful story of a cascading medical failure that had begun with that first cardiac event, then been gravely compounded by a long-standing history of sarcoidosis, an inflammatory autoimmune disease that produces slow tissue damage across multiple organs, and particularly within the heart and lungs. For years, that quiet condition had been scarring his cardiac tissue, steadily weakening the very muscle that finally gave out on him. And the cruelest irony of all is that Duncan had actually been taking his health genuinely seriously in his final years, having adopted a vegetarian diet and a regular exercise routine. His enormous, imposing frame had long made him a casting director's dream, but it had also quietly masked the cardiovascular vulnerabilities that mortality data shows disproportionately affect large-framed black men. His story is a sobering reminder that chronic, silent diseases can undermine even the most physically commanding person alive, and that a powerful exterior can hide a genuinely fragile system beneath it. Beyond his Oscar-nominated, career-defining role as the tender-hearted John Coffey in The Green Mile in 1999, he brought his singular, unforgettable presence to Armageddon, Planet of the Apes, Daredevil, and Sin City. Duncan's final chapter teaches us a quiet but vital lesson about truly listening to your own body, and about understanding your personal risks, because chronic disease, as his case so painfully showed, can build silently in the dark for years before it finally strikes, all at once. Malcolm Jamal Warner. For an entire generation of us, Malcolm Jamal Warner was quite simply family. As Theo Huxtable across all 8 seasons of The Cosby Show, he helped to define the black father-son relationship on television itself, earning an Emmy nomination and a permanent, cherished place in millions upon millions of hearts, which is exactly why his sudden passing on July 20th, 2025, felt so terribly, deeply personal to so many. While vacationing together with his family at a beach in the Limon province, on Costa Rica's Caribbean coast, Warner was suddenly caught in a powerful rip current while swimming. And despite immediate, desperate rescue efforts from nearby surfers and beachgoers, he simply could not be revived. He was 54 years old. Costa Rica's Judicial Investigation Agency completed an autopsy and confirmed his cause of death as accidental asphyxia by submersion, a drowning, with toxicology screening showing no alcohol, no drugs, and no foreign substances whatsoever in his system. There was nothing at all suspicious about his passing. It was simply a devastating accident on what should have been an ordinary and joyful family day. He had been swimming near his own young daughter at the time, and she was safely rescued. The beach where it happened is known locally for its dangerous currents, with warning signage that unfortunately remains inconsistent. A painful detail that has since renewed urgent calls for better water safety awareness all along that coastline. And what makes his loss resonate so powerfully is just how genuinely full his life still was. Far beyond Theo, Warner had built one of the most respected multi-decade careers in all of black entertainment. He directed television, earned a Grammy nomination for his 2015 spoken word album, played Dr. A.J. Austin on The Resident, and hosted a beloved podcast. His final chapter carries no scandal and no hidden illness, only the sobering, tender reminder of just how quickly a peaceful moment can turn, and of how very much light a single person can leave behind them when they go. James Avery. To the millions of us who grew up in the 1990s, James Avery was the very embodiment of tough, unconditional, loving fatherhood. As Philip Banks, Uncle Phil, on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, his commanding 6'3" frame and that thunderous voice concealed a deep tenderness that made him the true moral center of the entire show, and arguably the father figure that a whole generation quietly wished they'd had. So when he passed away on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2013, at the age of 68, it genuinely felt like losing a real member of the family. His death came following complications from open-heart surgery, what had first appeared to be a serious but ultimately manageable cardiac procedure, instead gave way to a cascade of failures, and his death certificate went on to list contributing conditions that together painted a picture of long, cumulative decline. severe coronary heart disease, end-stage kidney disease, and type 2 diabetes. Each one of them carried its own grave risks, but together, they created a perfect storm that his body simply could no longer weather. Type 2 diabetes, which affects Black Americans at notably higher rates, had very likely been quietly damaging his heart, his kidneys, and his circulation for many years, and then major surgery placed one final strain that his already weakened organs simply could not absorb. His story is a powerful and important lesson in how metabolic and cardiovascular diseases silently accumulate, long before any real alarm ever sounds. Beyond Uncle Phil, Avery's commanding presence anchored decades of remarkable work. He voiced the villainous Shredder on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, appeared on LA Law, and performed Shakespeare upon the stage. His final chapter is a genuine call to take our chronic conditions seriously, to screen early, to manage them consistently, and to understand that the very diseases which rarely make headlines are so often the ones quietly reshaping all our futures. Lance Reddick. Lance Reddick was, in every way, the living picture of discipline. Lean, regal, and famously devoted to a rigorous fitness regimen well into his 60s, which is exactly why his death, on March 17, 2023, at the age of just 60, so utterly stunned everyone who knew him. Only 6 days before the world premiere of John Wick Chapter 4, in which he reprised his iconic role as the elegant concierge Charon, the actor was suddenly gone. He had been photographed promoting the film only days earlier, looking energetic, lean, and entirely healthy. His family requested that no full autopsy be performed, citing personal and religious reasons, and his cause of death was recorded from his own medical history as ischemic heart disease and coronary artery disease, natural causes. His passing went on to spark a genuinely important public conversation because it so starkly illustrated one of all of medicine's most unsettling truths. Cardiovascular disease can be dangerously, deceptively silent. Plaque can quietly narrow the arteries for many years, and genetics, chronic stress, and slowly accumulated damage can ultimately outweigh even the most committed diet and the most faithful exercise. Cardiologists later used his case to gently remind the public that a fit exterior is simply no guarantee of a healthy heart. Statistically, Black men face substantially higher cardiovascular mortality than their white counterparts at the very same age, a disparity that researchers link to chronic stress, to barriers to care, and to underdiagnosis. Beyond John Wick, Reddick had anchored 5 seasons of The Wire as the upright Cedric Daniels, starred across all 4 seasons of Fringe, and lent his unmistakable voice to major video games like Destiny. Director Chad Stahelski personally dedicated John Wick Chapter 4 to his memory. His final chapter stands as a genuine wake-up call for us all. Heart disease does not always announce itself first, and truly knowing your own risk factors can quite literally be life-saving, no matter how healthy you may happen to look. Clarence Williams III. Clarence Williams III redefined the very meaning of cool for an entire generation. With his towering afro and his effortless, unmistakable style, he made the undercover officer Link Hayes on the Mod Squad into a genuine cultural icon from 1968 to 1973, quietly reshaping how Black masculinity itself appeared on American television. So when he passed away on June 4, 2021, at his Los Angeles home at the age of 81, it felt somehow fitting that his own exit was every bit as quiet and dignified as the man himself had always been. His cause of death was colon cancer, a disease he had battled entirely in private for quite some time before his diagnosis was ever made public. His family, honoring his lifelong devotion to that privacy, chose to decline to share any of the specific details of his treatment, and his passing carried a painful statistical weight along with it. He became the second beloved Black actor within roughly a single year to die of colorectal cancer, following the loss of Chadwick Boseman. Among Black Americans, colorectal cancer mortality runs meaningfully higher than the national average, a gap that researchers attribute to later screening and to unequal access to care, even though the disease itself is highly treatable when it is only caught early enough. And that hard reality gives his quiet passing a far larger, more urgent meaning. Beyond the Mod Squad, Williams built a truly remarkable 60-year career. He played Prince's father in Purple Rain in 1984, appeared in Coming to America, delivered chilling work in Tales from the Hood, and brought real gravitas to American Gangster, all while performing Shakespeare on Broadway between his screen roles. His final chapter, exactly like his diagnosis, was handled with characteristic dignity, but it also underscores an urgent public health message. Early screening genuinely saves lives, and the very barriers that so often delay it are still quietly claiming some of our most distinguished voices. Robert Guillaume. Robert Guillaume spent his entire career defying every expectation placed upon him, and his final chapter proved to be no different at all. Best known as the sharp-tongued butler Benson Dubois on Soap, and its long-running spin-off Benson, and beloved by younger audiences the world over as the voice of the wise old baboon Rafiki in Disney's The Lion King, he passed away at his Los Angeles home on October 24, 2017, at the age of 89, with his devoted wife right by his side. His death was ultimately the result of complications from a stroke, but not a recent one at all. The truly pivotal event had actually come back in 1999, while he was filming the ABC drama Sports Night. That first stroke very nearly killed him outright, and his doctors gave him only minimal odds of any recovery, let alone a genuine return to acting. And yet, within just months, Guillaume defied every last prediction, returning to the show and courageously writing his own real recovery directly into his character's storyline. A remarkable decision that helped destigmatize stroke survivorship for millions upon millions of viewers. For 18 more precious years he lived on as a survivor, though that first stroke had quietly compromised his health, elevating all of his long-term risks. By his late 80s, the cardiovascular system that had once carried him through could no longer compensate. His story illuminates a truly sobering reality. Stroke survivors face significantly elevated risks of future events, and Black Americans face stroke at notably higher rates, and with worse outcomes, largely due to persistent disparities in healthcare access. Guillaume made real history as the only Black actor ever to win Emmys for both a lead and a supporting role in a comedy series, and he performed right into his 80s with his spirit entirely undimmed. His final chapter is a genuine testament to resilience, nearly 2 full decades of defiant survival, and a quiet, powerful lesson in how a stroke can shadow a life long, long after the initial blow. Moses Gunn. Moses Gunn may not be a household name today, but among all those who truly knew theater and film, his voice and his presence were quite simply the stuff of legend. Classically trained, with a deep and utterly commanding delivery, he moved effortlessly from the great Shakespearean stages to Roots, to The Cosby Show, and to the original Shaft in 1971. When he passed away on December 16, 1993, at a hospital in Guilford, Connecticut, at the age of 64, he left behind a body of work that had already earned him the profound, lasting respect of his peers, even if mainstream fame itself had never quite fully found him. His cause of death was complications from asthma, specifically an acute asthmatic episode, layered atop years of slow, chronic respiratory deterioration. He had managed the condition faithfully for years, with inhalers and careful medication, but the sheer cumulative damage of decades of bronchial inflammation eventually overwhelmed his lungs entirely. And his case is a genuinely sobering reminder that asthma, so very often dismissed as merely a minor childhood condition, can in reality be deadly. A severe attack can close the airways within mere minutes, and prolonged episodes that resist treatment claim thousands of American lives each and every year. Black Americans, in particular, face substantially higher asthma mortality, a disparity tied to environmental factors and to real barriers to care. The final episode that took Gunn struck during a cold Connecticut winter, cold air being one of asthma's single most common triggers of all. Beyond playing Bumpy Jonas in Shaft, he earned a Tony nomination, delivered landmark performances with the pioneering Negro Ensemble Company, and appeared in Roots, The Next Generations. His final chapter quietly reveals how a condition that so many people consider entirely trivial can quietly take one of our culture's most distinguished voices. and how very often such battles are fought completely out of public view, by people simply struggling, with everything they have, just to breathe. Nelson Ellis. Nelson Ellis was one of his whole generation's most electrifying character actors, and for the devoted fans of HBO's True Blood, he was truly unforgettable as Lafayette Reynolds, a fry cook, a survivor, a character that Ellis imbued with flamboyance, deep vulnerability, and startling emotional depth across 7 full seasons. So when he passed away on July 8, 2017, at just 39 years old, audiences everywhere were left devastated, and most of them had no idea at all of the private battle he had been quietly fighting for years. And what genuinely sets his story apart is the truly extraordinary honesty of his own family, who made the brave choice to release a transparent public statement explaining exactly what had happened to him. His cause of death was heart failure, resulting from the complications of alcohol withdrawal. After years of privately struggling with alcohol addiction, Ellis had attempted to stop drinking without any medical supervision, and the withdrawal itself triggered a cascade of complications that his body simply could not survive. His family's decision to speak so plainly was deliberate, and it was deeply generous. They explicitly hoped that naming the true cause might help other families confront addiction before it was ever too late for them. Their statement illuminated one of addiction's very cruelest paradoxes, that for someone with severe alcohol dependence, suddenly stopping can actually be far more dangerous than continuing, which is the very reason that medically supervised detox exists and genuinely saves so many lives. Ellis had been seeking his sobriety precisely because he so badly wanted to live, and the very act of trying to heal, without the right medical support around him, tragically took his life instead. Beyond Lafayette, he appeared in The Help, in Get On Up, and in The Butler, earning real recognition as a fearless performer. His final chapter is never a story of weakness, but rather of a genuine healthcare gap, and a powerful reminder that recovery from alcohol dependence should truly never be attempted alone. Cameron Boyce. Cameron Boyce was pure light itself, a young Disney Channel star beloved by many millions of children as Luke Ross on Jessie, and as Carlos in the Descendants films, with a career and a heart that were both only just beginning to reveal their full, remarkable scope. On July 6, 2019, his family found him unresponsive in his bed at his Los Angeles home. He had simply gone to sleep the night before, and he never woke up again. He was only 20 years old, and the sheer shock of it rippled straight across the entire entertainment world. After a careful and thorough investigation, his cause of death was officially determined to be sudden, unexpected death in epilepsy, a condition known as SUDEP, triggered by a seizure while he slept. Cameron had been quietly diagnosed with epilepsy several years earlier, a condition that he managed privately with his medication, all while his family lived every day with the constant, low-level fear that a single seizure could one day turn fatal. SUDEP is genuinely rare, but the risk does rise in patients with certain seizure patterns, and it so often strikes precisely when a person is alone or fast asleep. There was no drama at all to investigate, and no foul play of any kind. There was just a bright young man with a manageable medical condition that, on one perfectly ordinary night, took absolutely everything from him, entirely without warning. And what his grieving family chose to do next transformed their own unimaginable grief into real, lasting purpose. His parents founded the Cameron Boyce Foundation, channeling their profound loss into epilepsy research and youth-focused causes, and his case has since become an important part of the ongoing scientific effort to understand why SUDEP happens at all. His final chapter is heartbreaking beyond words, but it is also, genuinely, a beacon, raising real awareness of a condition that affects millions, and reminding us that even a life cut so devastatingly short can still spark a change that goes on to protect countless others. Kim Porter. Kim Porter was a model and an actress whose genuine warmth seemed to radiate through every single room she ever entered, and whose sudden death on November 15, 2018, at just 47 years old, utterly stunned the entire entertainment world. Friends had spoken with her only hours earlier. She had been recovering from what everyone truly believed was just a routine flu, one she had been quietly fighting for a couple of weeks. Her passing seemed, at first, almost impossible to even comprehend, and in that painful absence of any real answers, rumors and conspiracy theories swirled relentlessly across social media for weeks on end. And then the medical examiner finally released the actual truth. And it was heartbreakingly simple. Her cause of death was lobar pneumonia, a serious bacterial infection of the lungs, and it was ruled entirely natural. Lobar pneumonia inflames whole sections of the lungs at once, flooding them with fluid and severely impairing the body's ability to take in oxygen. And while modern antibiotics do successfully treat most cases when they are only caught early enough, delayed treatment can turn genuinely deadly with frightening speed, especially when someone dismisses their symptoms as merely a bad flu. Porter had reportedly been pushing herself through her illness for weeks, still managing her family and all her responsibilities, right up until the infection finally overwhelmed her body entirely. And perhaps the most painful part of all is that her death was very likely preventable. Earlier medical attention, or even a simple chest scan, might well have caught it all in time. Pneumonia claims tens of thousands of American lives every single year, with a heavier toll among Black Americans that is tied to delays in seeking care. Beyond her modeling, Porter appeared in film and in the BET series Single Ladies, all while raising 4 children. Her final chapter is a genuinely vital, practical warning to every viewer. A lingering flu that simply will not improve truly deserves real medical attention. Bobby Christina Brown. The story of Bobby Christina Brown is easily one of the most heartbreaking on this entire list, because she was, in so very many ways, still standing right at the very beginning of everything. The only daughter of Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown, she had grown up entirely within the harsh glare of fame and had only just begun stepping toward her own path, with reality television appearances and a small acting role to her name. But she was also, at the very same time, a young woman openly and painfully struggling with profound grief after losing her beloved mother in 2012. On January 31, 2015, she was found unresponsive at her Georgia home, and after nearly 6 long months in a coma, she passed away on July 26, 2015. She was only 22 years old. Her cause of death was recorded as pneumonia, with brain damage from oxygen deprivation, associated with immersion in water and drug use. Crucially and importantly, the medical examiner ultimately could not determine whether what had happened to her was accidental or intentional, and so formally left her manner of death undetermined. A genuine distinction that deserves our respect, rather than any speculation at all. And out of that very same respect, the painful particulars are truly best left entirely unexplored. What can be said is that a civil court later found her boyfriend, Nick Gordon, responsible for her death in a wrongful death judgment. He himself died in 2020, but the far deeper tragedy of her story is really what it reveals about unprocessed grief. She had been drowning, in every sense, in the overwhelming loss of her mother, and the support she so desperately needed never quite reached her in time. Her final chapter is not a mystery to be sensationalized, but rather a sorrowful, tender lesson about just how devastating inherited trauma can truly be, and about how very urgently young people in real pain need genuine help. If you are grieving or quietly struggling, please reach out to someone. You truly do not ever have to carry it all alone. 16 legends, 16 final chapters, some closed by a hidden illness carried in silence, some by a sudden accident on an ordinary day, some by the quiet accumulation of years no one saw. Together, they remind us that behind every famous face is a private battle the cameras never captured. A few of these stories also revealed how fame, and even our healthcare system, can quietly fail the people the world adores. So here's the question worth debating. Should public figures be more open about their health, or is their privacy an absolute right? And which final chapter moved you the most? Share your honest thoughts below. Every voice matters here. And subscribe to Secret Celebrity Stories, where we honor the lives behind the legends.